win is a win is a win, and no matter how ugly it was, no matter how frustrating, no matter how much room for improvement the team still has, this was a win that the Eagles needed to have coming off of the bye, and they did secure a victory over the Cleveland Browns on this Week 6. Welcome to the Birds Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Cleveland Browns 20-16 this afternoon at Lincoln Financial Field. And again, I'm going to start by saying again that a win is a win is a win. And in this particular situation, it doesn't matter whether or not the Eagles defeat the Cleveland Browns by just 4 points, or whether or not the Eagles defeat the Cleveland Browns by 40 points. It doesn't matter in the standings book because this will go down as an Eagles victory. And that's really, really important for this particular team. There's definitely a lot of room for criticism and definitely a lot of room for improvement among this team, even in the midst of this particular victory. But it's important to start out by acknowledging that, yes, the Eagles came away with a victory, and that's important right now because now the team has something that they can build on. But it is also important here to acknowledge that, yes, it is frustrating to see the Cleveland Browns losing to other division rivals over the course of this season so far this year. And the Cleveland Browns were able to keep this game as close as it was. The Browns have now faced everybody in the NFC East, and the Eagles-Browns score was the closest in terms of point differential among any of the NFC East rivals. The Browns lost 33-17 to the Dallas Cowboys in Week 1. They lost 21-15 to the New York Giants in Week 3. And they lost 34-13 to the Washington Commanders just last week. So the fact that the Eagles' point differential is even narrower than the 6-point differential that the Browns had lost to the Giants in, that's frustrating as a fan. As Eagles fans, we know that this team is more talented than the New York Giants. It's more talented than the Washington Commanders. It's more talented than the Dallas Cowboys. So to see the Eagles have to struggle, have to fight for every single point is embarrassing, borderline embarrassing, when those struggles come against a team that is now 1-5. Look, at the beginning of the season, I was very nervous about some of the AFC North teams that we would have to face. Maybe not so much the Cleveland Browns, although this game definitely gives me a lot of pause in that regard. But some of the other teams definitely had some concerns. So you had the Cincinnati Bengals, who the Eagles are going to play in a couple weeks. They're not playing great football right now, but they always have the potential to go off. The Pittsburgh Steelers are looking good, and then the Baltimore Ravens are another team that this team is going to have to play. And if the team is playing football against teams like that, it's not going to work. You can't put up just 20 points against the Baltimore Ravens and expect to win the game. There was a lot of good in this game. I'm going to be very clear about that. And it starts with the quarterback. Jalen Hurts, 16 for 25 on the day, 64% completion rating, 264 passing yards. He had 1 sack. He had 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers. That was a clean game that came out of Jalen Hurts, and he threw for 2 touchdowns. In addition to that, he ran 14 times for 33 yards. This was as good of a game from Jalen Hurts that I have seen in quite a while. Now, some of that may have been the fact that Jalen had to be reliant on other receivers over the course of this game beyond A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. A.J. Brown had 6 catches on 9 targets for 116 yards. A.J. Brown also had the first Eagles touchdown of the day. And then Devontae Smith, 3 catches on 4 targets for 64 yards. He had the go-ahead game-winning touchdown for the Eagles in the fourth quarter. Beyond that, big targets included Grant Calcaterra, 4 catches on 4 targets for 67 yards, 16.8 on average there. His longest catch was a 34-yard reception. Jahan Dotson, 1 catch on 3 targets for 10 yards. Saquon Barkley was in the mix there, 2 catches on 2 targets. Jalen did a good job of spreading the ball around among his receivers, and that's going to be really important for him as he continues to develop, as he continues to build that awareness. Going through his reads, trying to find where the open guy is, and not be so laser focused in on who's the first read or who's the second read. Certainly getting things into the vicinity of A.J. Brown is always a good strategy, but if A.J. Brown's double covered, sometimes it doesn't really matter whether or not you put it into that general vicinity. It might be tough for A.J. Brown to come down with that football. The Eagles did rely on the run game, though the Browns were a little better at picking up on that and swallowing up a lot of the run opportunities. The Eagles had 116 rushing yards in the game. That's actually down from their average going into this game of 154 yards per game. The Eagles relied on Saquon Barkley, 18 carries, 47 yards. And again, the Browns were pretty well on top of him, so his performance was a little bit down, but you could see Saquon Barkley continued to fight for every yard. He was very much like a bulldozer out there. You could sometimes see him fighting off 8, 10 Cleveland Browns players just to try to get those extra yards. And those are really, really important attitudes to have where you're going to fight for those. I am really glad that we've got somebody like Saquon Barkley on our team simply because of that mindset where he's going to be able to take something that should be no gain, should be a loss of a couple, and able to turn that into positive yardage. That's a big difference maker for this game. Kenny Gainwell had 3 carries for 23 yards, and Jahan Dotson even got on the stat board, 1 carry for 13 yards. We talked about Jalen Hurts, 14 carries for 33 yards already. Again, the run game wasn't quite as present, and we did see the Cleveland Browns doing a much better job of attacking that as a strong point for the Eagles and trying to limit the run game's impact. But again, that really was supplanted by the clean game that Jalen Hurts played. What I will say as it relates to Saquon is that he does need to work on some other elements. Definitely a lot more situational awareness. Saquon Barkley was trying to get up to the first down marker. He ran out of bounds. He thought he had it, but he was actually just a touch short. But he did have room to get in front of the first down marker before running out of bounds. That's the kind of stuff that irks you as an Eagles fan, seeing stuff like that where you want to make sure that you get the first down before you step out of bounds. Put your team in the best possibility to win. That decision did wind up making a difference because what winds up happening is the Eagles have to line up for 3rd and 1. Jalen Hurts gets sacked immediately and they lose yards. And the Eagles line up for a field goal, and that field goal gets blocked and returned by former Eagle Rodney McLeod for a touchdown. Other than that one special teams gaffe, there really wasn't a ton of bad play by special teams. It was great seeing Cooper DeJean not get run into by any of his own players while he was fielding punts, which is an improvement from the Buccaneers game. The biggest black mark for the Eagles offense was the fact that they continued to be the only team in the entire NFL to not score a single point during the first quarter. This is also the first time in Eagles history that through the first 5 games of the season, the team has failed to score any points in the first quarter. Nick Sirianni was asked about this after the game.
We started slow, first two series, we didn't score, but then they put their head down and they went down and got points, and then they did it again. So I don't want that to be in their heads. We didn't execute, we didn't call good enough plays, and we didn't score early on, but we scored and got up 10-0. So I think as a team we started well. We can start a little faster offensively. We'll keep working on that. Keep trying to put them in plays that they execute well. Put the ball in our playmakers' hands and let Jalen go to work. I thought Jalen played an unbelievable game today, Yeah, we'll get on track. It will turn because we're working hard at it and players are working hard at it.
Now on to the defense, and the first thing I'm going to do is acknowledge that Brandon Graham started in his 200th game for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's quite the accomplishment in today's NFL, and mad props to him, who is in his 15th and likely his final year with the team. So this was, again, just a huge moment for him personally. He got the chance to address that.
You know what? I got to give it to the ones before me. You know, the ones that helped me during dark times. You know, I didn't think I would be here at 200, especially how I started. But like I told the guys, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And I think just getting served by some of the vets that I had, and then being that service to others. I don't get here without that. And then, of course, prayer and making sure that you just being a good person in the building and just doing the best that you can do every day. And I mean, you just see what happens. But 200 games, I don't take that lightly, and I'm very thankful.
Elsewhere in the defense, the Eagles were able to do a lot of good things, but again, still remains quite a bit of room for improvement. Deshaun Watson also had a relatively clean game, 16 completions on 23 attempts for 168 yards, no touchdowns through the air, no picks. Those no picks, he almost had one if it wasn't for C.J. Gardner-Johnson colliding with Quinyon Mitchell, which caused an incompletion. Quinyon Mitchell should have picked that ball off if it wasn't for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So that's the kind of stuff that needs to be fine-tuned for this particular defense. The Eagles also allowed the Browns to get 100 rushing yards, which was not a good look. By the time the Browns got to the second half, they were relying very heavily on Strong and Foreman. Strong had 8 carries for 43 yards. Foreman had 10 carries for 31 yards. But the Eagles' defense, for the most part, was holding the Browns to field goals. Again, the only touchdown that was given up to the Browns was on special teams on that blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown. So the fact that the Eagles kept the Browns' offense out of the end zone does matter. One important note as well, with this being Brandon Graham's 200th game, it was also Cooper DeJean's first start as an Eagle after dealing with an injury that left him out of training camp for the most part, and he really wasn't able to get into any kind of action until the last week of the preseason. Cooper DeJean had his first start and really did a good job subbing in for Avonte Maddox. DeJean had 6 combined tackles as well as half a sack. DeJean was also returning punts and returned 4 punts for a combined 51 yards. His longest was a 19-yard punt return that really set the Eagles up in the second half. So it's good to have that multi-tool while he's returning punts as well as filling in on that nickel corner position. But even in light of all of that, and even in light of all the good, there were still so many mistakes, so many weird decisions, and so many things that left you sitting there wondering, what is this team? This team still feels like it's struggling to find itself. In 2023, we had a lot of wins that were like this one, where yes, they were wins. Yes, they counted as wins on the stat board. Yes, they got us to 10-1. But they didn't feel right. They didn't feel complete. They didn't feel convincing. The Eagles are still looking for a convincing win. The Eagles are still looking for a win that's going to put the fan base at ease. That's going to say, yes, this is a team that we can have confidence in this year. I don't have a win like that. And this was a good opportunity to provide that kind of a win. Instead, the Eagles let Deshaun Watson get his first third down completion this year. He was 0 for 25 going into this game. The Browns were 3 for 12 on fourth down, which is not great, but it's also a marked improvement from 0 for anything. There needs to be an evaluation as to why this team is not scoring points in the first quarter. It's not like they didn't have opportunities. The Eagles got the ball first. They had an opportunity to go down the field, and they didn't. But this team is still struggling to find its identity, in my opinion, and until it finds that identity, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be delivering more wins like this one. where we're not scoring in the first quarter, we're wasting opportunities, we're making questionable decisions. The game-sealing play, Jalen Hurts throwing a bomb to A.J. Brown, that was a questionable decision because it was very reminiscent of the Eagles' loss to the Seahawks, where Jalen Hurts threw a very similar play. Now, it was revealed in the post-game that Jalen Hurts transitioned into that. He checked into that play, so it wasn't what was originally called. But the situational awareness there is that you only need to get 10 yards, and instead you're throwing a bomb. That's not good decision making. And that's the kind of stuff that the Eagles really, really need to focus on to make sure that they're able to have a complete game from start to finish, be able to play well on all sides of the football, and be able to put the fan base at ease that this is a team that they can have confidence in. But let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your thoughts about this game? What do you think needs to happen over the course of these next few weeks? Let me know. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning in to the Bird's Nest Podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest Podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, and the Odyssey app. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.